Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd Podcast, episode 49, in which I interview my old friend, Joe Shantz. But first... Today's episode is brought to you by the letter C. C for confront. 1. An action of being able to face. 2. The ability to be there comfortably and perceive. 3. Confront itself is a result and an end product. It isn't a doingness. It is an ability to face without flinching or avoiding. Our guest tonight is a dear friend of mine. So let's get to the interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd Podcast.
Well, I'm so excited that I'm here today. I didn't realize you had such a plush studio. For those who haven't been on this podcast, it's a studio that's as huge as like Howard Stern's studio. Ed is in the back, like in the sound booth, and I'm on this like lovely plush couch. And by the way, your assistant made the best cup of tea I think I've ever had.
Oh, thank you so much.
And the valet parking, I didn't realize you had valet parking too.
Oh, yeah. And then the studio next door, we can hear Kyle MacLachlan right now. He's, well, no spoilers. We've signed contracts, so we're not allowed to say anything. But there's a red curtain over, well, we've said too much. It's been too long. How are you?
It has been. I've been great. I can't even remember the last time we talked. It seems like we talk all the time on Facebook about random things, but it's nice to do this.
Yeah.
I've been a huge fan of the show. I can't believe I'm actually on here because there are people who I really look up to and just think are absolutely fantastic and have been really inspiring to me throughout my career, if you will, in this weird space. Mm-hmm. And so to be here is a real honor.
Do you have any people in mind? I mean, in particular?
Well, yeah, I mean, Frater Ka, certainly. One, and Poke Runyon is clearly like he's been around, and done some fantastic things. I'm trying to like be respectful of names. Oh, well, of course, Lon Milo Duquette, he's awesome. Mark Williams. I'm gonna mess her name up, but episode 45.
Oh,
I'll just say that because I'm going to mess her name up, and I don't.
Oh, right. Yeah. Lori,
yes. So I mean, tons of people that are just. Oh, Jeff Contreras, another great one.
Yeah.
Having him on just there. Amazing people.
Very cool. My wife wanted me to talk to you about video games.
No, awesome. No, I can talk. I'd love to talk about a lot of different things. So, but yeah, video games. I'm happy to talk about that because
there's a lot of crossover with esotericism.
There really is, and I think some of it's really deliberate, and I think some of it is just sort of in the the general consciousness and what people kind of pull in.
Yeah. One thing she wanted me to say, and I'm going to edit this down a little bit, but do you feel that it's a viable art form?
Of course.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
think that there's so many different ways of expressing oneself. I mean, just because it's not, there isn't a legitimate museum for something doesn't mean that any kind of form of human expression that gives someone joy, I think, is art. That's not really a horribly formal definition of that, but I certainly think so.
That reminds me of the glass pipe phenomenon. I forget the name of the. There was a great documentary that I saw, but it was there was a man who was an art collector, and he walked in to this place and saw this most beautiful sculpture of glass he'd ever seen, and the subtleties, and this it was a dragon, and he was going to find out what he could, if he could broker it as an artist, and then until he saw the bull and the carb, and then his heart just sank. It's not art. It's a fucking pipe.
But
But it is
enjoy it.
art. That's the thing.
Yeah, if it brings you joy and it
Yeah.
inspires you, I think it's really really important. It's funny because I remember even some of the talking about video games. There were some really cool things in some of the Final Fantasy series. In particular, the thing that I remember a lot is Final Fantasy X. And there are YouTube videos of the summons that occur from it, and the sort of this mystical Chinese symbolism that was coming in as this being was coming forth, from a different plane into the manifestation, really was really inspired,
Hmm.
and some of the different ways of seeing light project into some sort of energy. Some of the ways that's been expressed in video games is really inspired and
Yeah, it's
helps
true.
people visualize things, particularly when, I think that a lot of esotericists take for granted that, you know, there are a lot of people out there that cannot visualize things in this technicolor form, or get like this really deep sensation.
Right.
So seeing some of these things can help them just get add on to their experience of what it is that they're experiencing when they go through this work.
Yeah. And then yeah, there's somehow expectation. Well, I mean, yeah, every day, our expectations get in the way of, the reality of what's in front of us or what we're experiencing. And I think that happens to people who want to experience something more. And it's more than what? It's like it's built into your definition that if you experience it, it's no longer the thing you're looking for. So, but if it's more specific, well, I want to have an astral experience. I had a student once. I hope you don't, no, I won't say his name. I'll just say he's an impurator now. Um, but but back when he was a Theoricus, he was saying, I'm not ready to go out of Theoricus. And I said, why? And he said, well, I can't do body of light. I can't get out of my body. I've had no luck whatsoever, astrally. And I was like, well, he was in Chicago, and I was saying, you've been here to the Temple of Isis, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, you remember the front room? Do you remember what it looks like? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, are you kind of visualizing it right now? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, what's different about it? And he's like, well, there's a Christmas tree on the left. I'm like, yeah, there is a Christmas tree on the left. You just astral projected here. You're ready for practicus. And he was like,
Yep.
whoa, is that easy? I'm like, yeah, if it's not that easy, it's not it. It's a sense you already have. It's as easy as breathing or looking. And, if you're trying real hard, like you're straining to get some horrible turd out, then that's not astral projection.
That's
That's
a
something
great
else.
description. I love that. Yeah, and I do think that there's this naturalness about it. I think that you know, I wish that there were better instructors out there. I wish that there were better schools out there, because the reality is, a lot of the schools that teach some of this stuff to some people are these solar, like very ego driven groups that are like, this is the way that you're gonna do it, and it's got to look like this, and it's got to smell like this, and that works
Yeah,
for some people, and it really doesn't at all for others.
yeah. Yeah, it's branding, it seems like this is our brand. And
Yeah.
there's a certain kind of quote unquote power, and I say quote unquote because I don't think that's the right word, but when you get like a group of people together that are all collectively visualizing the same thing and insisting that it's reality and that the thing everybody else thinks is reality isn't, there's a certain thing that happens like you pop out, you create a new universe,
Yes.
temporarily. But the
Yeah.
problem is it's like that quote, well, that great quote in the tower card, initiation about they beheld their end together and were astonished, like I
Yeah.
think of these like racists in the Inland Empire that are still like, avidly supporting Trump, and that like they're just shrinking, the community is getting smaller and smaller, and they're like, why does everybody hate us, until the very last one. And then, but like my dad says in his book, like have patience for them and let them come around and wake up and realize, oh, I've been doing it wrong this whole time, and now I'm so relieved. And give them space because it might not happen in this lifetime. I
Yeah,
try to do that for my own sanity. Otherwise, I become so enraged that I fulfill their stereotype of the enraged leftist.
it's and that's really interesting too because I think that what's very and I'm going off on a weird tangent, but
Oh, tangents are great.
we're like weird tangent guys
Yeah.
together, so let's just go. But so I in a work situation, I had this guy who it's about 10 years ago who just was like the biggest jerk to me, and we didn't get along. I didn't like him, he didn't like me, and at work. I mean, he really was very much an enemy. So fast forward later, even maybe like 3 years after I left the place, I really, there really wasn't any real emotionality attached to him. I was, if someone brought his name up, it would be like, oh yeah, we really didn't get along, like we didn't like each other. But that was it. There was really no emotional connection there. But fast forward to now, and I find out this last week, he had killed himself, and I think that the
Wow.
first my first reaction is, oh my God, is his family okay? Because I knew I knew he had a son and his son's in college and
Yeah.
um, and I did some work for him as well that you know that he gets a little bit of peace wherever he's at.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're in that situation, when you're in the middle of it, it's very real to you, and those kinds of conflicts or those kinds of relationships, they really are very real. But when you actually can step back, whether you're in it or not, meaning like maybe you have the space of 10 years, or maybe you're just evolved enough to step out of it, you can kind of see it for what it is, which is all just BS.
Right.
It's okay. You have this conflict. It doesn't really mean anything, at the end of
That's
the
true.
day,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
so I think your point about space is just so important. It's so important to give people
Space.
space. Period.
Yeah. Well, I might have done it wrong this morning. There was someone I knew in the order from years ago, and she was talking about, on Facebook about how all these people are unfriending me because I'm a Trump supporter. And I was like, "What? You're a fucking Trump supporter?" And for some reason, every Trump supporter I run into is blonde, and that bugs me because I'm blonde. And my mom raised me to
Well,
like,
clearly you're a Trump supporter. You're
yeah,
just a
clearly I'm
closet
a
Trump
Nazi.
supporter.
Clearly, and then, but it's that kind of thing. Like I was just telling Janie, like, and because I'm sure that pretty girls can relate to this. What I'm about to say is when you're talking to someone, a guy or whatever, and you're having a great conversation about a particular topic, and you're thinking that like, wow, we're both interested in this topic, and we both have a lot to contribute to this conversation. Wow, we could, really build on this. But then you realize that he just wants to get in your pants, and that this the whole thing has been a ploy.
Yeah, as a pretty
And
girl, I get that all the time.
yeah, yeah.
No, just
Yeah.
kidding. I
Well,
really
no, I mean, but it's like when someone's like, I agree with everything you're saying and you're so inspiring, and it turns out that it's just because I'm dressed as a priest and I'm a blonde and they're a racist, and they're just looking at me and saying, "Oh, you look like my brother. It's good to see you up, standing up there, sitting in a throne, getting all the attention." And it's like, okay, listen to one word that I say once, and I just don't understand how someone could have been my student once and now be a Trump supporter. And
you know
it's a weakness on my end, and I fully admit that. And I'm saying this out loud because I'm kind of like conflicted about it this morning, so it's on my mind. So I'm bringing it up.
it's well, I'm glad and there was something kind of similar, but another weird tangent.
Yeah,
Um, is that thinking about orders and things like that. I think it's so tough because on one hand, it's almost like a band in a way that you have like there are people that you'll meet in an order like that you go to because at the end of the day, like when you select like, okay, I'm going to join an order, like what should that be? I mean, ultimately what you want to find are people that you're going to kind of connect with on some you know eh, on both the mystical level as well as kind of a little bit of a superficial level too.
yeah,
um, on the other hand, like I remember there was a time when I left the first order I'd ever joined, and that was the one that we were in together.
Uh-huh.
Um, and there were these people that were really good friends of mine that wanted to kind of start something up, and we tried, and it just failed miserably. And I think that it failed not because we didn't really like each other, but I think that the partnership at that mystical level just really didn't. There wasn't enough connection there, and I think that sometimes you will have people where you really connect with at that mystical level that you don't necessarily need to be friends with, and
Yeah, that's true.
it's this
Like in
weird
the
stuff.
in the temple, you can both be in the presence of Osiris and kind of hug afterward, and like ask after each other's kids and everything. But then if you met outside, you'd be like, oh, this is totally someone who I'm completely incompatible with, and from a completely different part of town, and yeah,
Yeah, and there were people, even in that order where you had very different personalities, and you had very different people who believed very different things.
yeah.
And sometimes it worked, sometimes it really didn't, and sometimes it created a lot of conflict. But maybe that conflict also created a space where really cool things could be done. So I don't know. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know it's wild. I'm glad to have gotten. Yeah, I'm glad to be past it. I'm glad to have gone through it and come out the other side and be able to draw from those experiences as just a really interesting case study on humanity and groups. I mean, and it was I mean, like I mentioned in a previous episode, that it evolved alongside the internet. Like as the
yeah.
internet, it existed in a vacuum in a world that was the 80s where you could do that because everybody was just watching MTV, and that was the best thing you could find was MTV. And then the internet came in, and then there was actually I actually remember groups of people sitting in a candlelit room wearing black robes with a man in a brown robe telling them not to look at certain websites on the internet, and everybody like taking it seriously, like you could do that. Like you could tell people, don't Google this. I mean, this was before Google, when Highway
Yeah.
69 or whatever was Highway something rather was the search engine. But anyway,
Yeah, I think that those kinds of things are interesting. I think that they really work well for some people. I had my fill of it. I'll never do it again, but I'm
yeah,
so grateful that I had the experience. I met people who I think I'll be friends with for life, which is really nice.
I
And people that are really
intentionally,
inspired.
when I was about a year and a half old, I intentionally put shit in my mouth. Maybe I was two, but it was like it got on my hand. I wasn't doing things right. And then I was like, I wonder what would. And then, of course, wah! It was disgusting. And to this day, I vividly remember the taste. And yeah, I'm grateful that I had that experience too. But.
Yeah. Well, but
All good.
I think that there were some really good things that came out of it. I mean, I think that one thing, and I'm really grateful that I'm able to take a step back and instead of a lot of the pain and suffering, because actually there was a really good, and I'm not sure if it was your last podcast. It was
Yeah.
Santoro,
Mhm.
um, and I never like I'd heard stories. About this event where he was reverse initiated,
Yeah.
and he talked, and I didn't make the connection until he mentioned it. I'm like, oh my god, how painful would that be for someone, and what a horrible thing to do to a human being, like,
Yeah.
number one. Number two, a human being that you kind of say, yeah, I'm going to take you in as a brother and see you as a brother. um, that's just really not nice, no
Yeah.
matter what. And this isn't a guy who did, like, you know, the worst things in that particular group. So, I mean, and that's where, the so there are those kinds of things, but there are also the things where, I was inspired with a group of fellow people to, like, literally um, do where we did this kind of mystical walking where you're really slow walking and doing a mantra for 6 hours solid to create something, and I think we did. Like, there
That's
were signs of
true.
that success. So,
Yeah.
there were things that were really tough, and just where, like, I remember when I went to India on behalf of the order.
Oh God, yeah,
I
that was beautiful.
I wanted to die there though. I mean, I actually wanted to contract SARS. That's how bad off I was. That's how like messed up I was mentally.
Oh
On
wow.
the other hand, we did some great work. So, but I would never do it again. Not in this lifetime. Nope.
Yeah. Do you remember the Mother Superior at the in Calcutta?
Yes.
Would you mind telling me? Because I mean, I just there's a few people who are going to know kind of what we're making reference to. People who know me through the order know that that I volunteered with the mother with the Missionaries of Charity for 10 years on the first Sunday of the month here in LA, but that was tied karmically and magically to a trip that you were part of. And so, what was she like?
Well, the Mother Superior we only got we didn't have very much like it was just a very very quick
Yeah.
thing, as I recall. The what was who we met later on. So we had gotten a guide um, to like take us through because there were places we wanted to go for very specific reasons, and the guide that we had was very very devout. Um, it was a very devout Hindu, and he taught us a lot about Kali. And Kali was his god. But what was really interesting, what he taught me, and I'm going to get to the person I think you're
Hmm.
thinking of, because I don't know how things were presented afterwards, because I left very soon after,
Hmm.
and I think that there were things that were
Oh,
presented
surely.
in ways that really weren't reality.
Right.
And there was only one person left that could do that. But anyway, um, so this guide, he actually, you were in the car, and he's like, and he took us to the Temple of Kali, which is right on the same place as Mother Teresa's Home for the Dying.
Mm.
And he said, I can't go in with you because my mother's my God right now.
Oh,
And
wow.
that didn't make sense to me. But so we did our thing, we did our Kali thing, and that was great. And so I'm trying to understand like what he's talking about. He's like, well, my mom died, and it's my tradition that, or it's our tradition that, that person becomes your God for a year. And I still didn't quite get it. And so he took us to his home, and he had this whole spare bedroom, and it was all pictures, icons, different memorabilia of him and his mom. And he would go in there every day. Like that was his daily practice to remember that and to mourn her. And, in a lot of ways, what he kind of helped me focus on in one point is that your God is whatever your focus is. So if you're making that your mom, then that's your God. If you're making it Kali, then that's your God. It's that aspirational, like what are you really aspiring to in your real daily life? And that really
Bernie
kind of like
Sanders.
it like totally like did a light switch for me. The other one, he said, I think you guys are really kind of you guys seem to be very spiritual, and you seem to be very respectful of other traditions. I'm going to take you to my teacher.
Hmm.
And her name was Usama. Um, and this woman just radiated like love. She was like, you just wanted to hug her. And actually, there was a point when I just like looked at her, and she's like, "Yes, I know. I You love me. I love you too." It was very funny.
Oh.
Um, but it was exactly what I was thinking. And I went to her place, and she had this altar, and her altar had everything, every type of God, um, whether it was Hindu or Buddhist, because there were Buddhists there. It was Christian, and she, performed a miracle where it was such that she made something manifest, which out of thin air, and anointed us with it. And it's like, but it was all very like, just as you're talking about astral projection, it was the same kind of thing. It's like, well, this is nothing. I'm just gonna, okay, it appeared, and here you go, and moved on. And so, but what I think that she taught me more than anything else is that, it's really kind of my philosophy is that if you think about, even like the Western mystery Kabbalistic thing of the human being as a magical mirror for the universe,
Hmm.
I kind of see ourselves as that, like that. Okay, if you have everything in you, then why would you think that, does the heart conflict with the liver? Does your legs conflict with your eyeball? No, and I think that in the similar kind of way, the archetypes work together, and like it's like, to kind of paraphrase one of my old teachers, all the gods are in cahoots.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. I don't think that there is like, evil gods versus good gods. I think that
Right.
it's one system. It all works. You know, respect.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's like people have may have different paths, but at the end of the day, it all kind of works together and let people do what they're going to do. But so I'm going back to finally address your question. The
Oh,
Mother Superior, really, I think they were really referring to this woman named Usama, who was really our guide's teacher.
oh, I remember her. And she had the Ganesh shrine, or she had
Yes.
Ganesh also. But then there was the one who had taken over for Mother Teresa, and she said something about taking the miraculous metals to Mother Teresa's grave. That was what I had heard.
Um, we never talked about the metals,
Oh, okay.
and I don't think she didn't mention that at all. Like, I at least, it may have happened, but she didn't say that to me. But I think that you're dealing with, someone who really had a problem with the truth in general. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it did have. It's been a really long time, but we never talked about those things. That trip was way more mundane than you would think.
Yeah.
On so many levels.
Hmm.
It was from my view, the whole thing was really a hot mess. I mean, we really, from my perspective, we wanted to drop things off and be done with it.
Right.
Um, and that was, all I was there for. That's all I signed up to do, because I was in a horrible place mentally. You had two people there who had really dubious motives for being there, and
Right.
and that was just, there was a lot of inappropriateness there. um and we were only there for like it was like 2 days, 3 days, 2 nights or something. It was very, very short. um you know it was I think that it was a very personal experience for everyone, because I think everyone was there for very different reasons.
Yeah. Well, the fruit that kind of came out of it was everybody ended up with a Ganesh shrine when it was over. We did a ceremony, and I guess this might have been after you left, or maybe you weren't there, maybe you were there. But we had us all with around the tablet of shewbread with the wands out, and Ganesh dancing on the tablet of shewbread while we were all going around, taking turns going to different watchtowers, doing stuff in the vault, and we were all chanting Asiel Slugdrickni Pafalaplo Ganesh
Oh,
Asiel.
that sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
It
wasn't
was
there for that.
it was a Notoricon for May dominate forever over David Griffin and his
Oh
false lies.
no, are
There's
you
something like that
serious?
in the name
No.
of Ganesh.
Oh
And
no.
may
Oh,
Ganesh help us to get rid of the obstacle that is David Griffin, or
okay.
whatever.
Now, speaking of Trump, so like, let's go back to Trump. So, can you see like the
I guess
old Golden
maybe
Dawn?
it bugs me so much because I was a Trump supporter for so long.
No, like, I
Jesus.
kind of like, if you think about the Republican debates, you could kind of put some of the old order chiefs up on that stage. It would kind of be the same kind of thing. It had to have been like, living through it like was horrendous, and but I got to tell you, it must have looked really hilarious. From the outside, like if you were in Boda or if you were in like FOL, you probably looked at the Golden Dawn. You're like, what the hell is going on over there?
They weren't even really paying attention. Because I went to Boda, and I'd be like, they would say, "Oh, you're a member," and I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm traditional Golden Dawn," and they're like, "Oh, which one?" And I'm like, "Oh, the really bad one," and they're like, Which one's that?" And I'm like,
Which one's
this
that? Like,
this one
oh,
in
there are a
particular, and
couple of
they're like, "Yeah,
those.
I'm not familiar," and I was like, "Well." I kind of gave him a basic rundown, and then one of the guys was like, "Interesting." Now, in Boda, we use the Hierophant to represent our higher self, and it's the tarot key, and it's something we connect with. We all have our own inner Hierophant. Don't you find that dressing up as the Hierophant and doing the neophyte initiation exalts the ego? And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, definitely." I was like, without hesitation, I was like, for sure. But I mean, the whole game is to like pretend that it's not. And it's like, no, 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 no. Don't. Yeah, I'm not Edward. I'm the Lord of the universe. It's like
Right.
Crowley saying, I'm. Oh no, I've lost my ego. I'm now the Master Therion.
Right.
It's,
Well, yeah,
it's
that's kind
like
of
no
silly because
wonder.
through from 110 to 47, you're like literally sort of like running around the temple, and finally you're supposed to get that it was like you had your red ruby slippers all along, and you never really left anywhere. But no one really tells you that, and the thing is that like literally like people don't get it. Like they get in these robes and they get like into this like weird ego space, and
Yeah.
it's really
The
bad. I mean, I
David
think
Lynch
that
space. Yeah. It's like the Red Room. They you can make of it whatever you want. It could be
yes,
the fear or love. It could be the Black Lodge or the White Lodge. Who controls the arm today?
I can't wait till the next series comes out.
Oh yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that.
So Twin Peaks and the Golden Dawn. How would that line up?
In terms of officers,
Yeah,
or
yeah. It's just as a random question popped into my head. You've seen the Twin Peaks tarot that Ben Mackey's doing, right?
yeah, yeah.
So Agent
I
Cooper, he's
totally
got
like
as the
what he
magician.
did. So wait, who's the magician?
Agent Cooper?
Yeah, but see, and I appreciate like all of that, and you can make arguments for those things, but he
Sure.
was kind of flawed. Like to be way up
That's true.
in the upper
Everyone's flawed.
triad, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I think only Bobby's dad was the only character that was perfect, or that didn't seem to have
yeah,
anything wrong with him at all.
yeah, no, but but you could make an argument for magician because he did have all the tools. He was very, he had the
Mercurial.
tools of a Saya. He was really grounded, and he was able to kind of resist Audrey. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
And the,
but
the Tibetan method of divination he used.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I get it. It's fine. I think that that whole universe has its own like weird flaws, so you kind of have to take account of that. I like that.
Yeah.
Who would the Hierophant be?
Oh, yeah. Well, he had, and I can't remember his name, Major so and so, the Bobby's dad. The
Bobby's dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So like I'm trying to think of like who the officers would be.
yeah, they'd be twisted because I mean the whole point of the ceremony is they're all supposed to be these really lofty sort of abstract. Like Ma'at is hardly even a person. She's more of a scale. She's the scales themselves with a little feather. I mean personified, but you
Yeah, I mean, in his world, I think because everything's so dark and obscure, you actually would have someone like Madame Tremond being like the hegemon, maybe
mm,
because what's actually leading you through things is like this really obscure,
yeah.
even unseen thing.
Yeah, and I
Um,
had experience with, having, down the road without calling anyone out specifically, like the Hegeman archetype in my experience of the Golden Dawn being the one leading me to really bizarre, strange things that to this day I find myself trying to purge myself of karmically, but all, kind of being done in the
my
name of the other
goodness,
guy.
that's a story there. So let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, again, it's like it's about someone, and I might, I might even edit this out. It's about,
Oh,
but she was my Hegman, and she was also the person that 95% of my negative interactions with were actually with her, technically, where she would call me up and let me know what wanted me to do next.
yeah, and that's I think that gets into this really like the issue with orders in general.
And karma
It
and diffusion
well, y-
responsibility.
yeah, and the poor thing, like I think she literally took on a lot of that
A lot
karma.
of the horrible karma. Yeah.
Um, and wow, and it's those kinds of things that
Yeah, no, and I bear my responsibility for my share. There's a tendency
oh
to
yeah,
want to
no,
like put it all outside of myself, but
oh I definitely earned my degree of karma, and I definitely had to go back to the people that I hurt and just said, look, here's the deal. I am so sorry. You don't have to forgive me, but here's what happened. Here's what went down. And, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And, fortunately, a lot of those people were way more evolved than I was. And we're just like, look, dude, it's fine. Like, we'll get through it.
We've all been through it. Yeah.
But, it's
It's
weird that you have
it's like a
these
specific
people.
dark. Sorry, go on.
But so I thought like it bothered me for the longest time that you had a leader who really like not only really had a good understanding of people and could really lead them to really great places and really was a good healer and really knowledgeable and just you know so that there were a lot of good qualities about them, but someone who also did really bad things. And it bothered me for the longest time, like how do you deal with that kind of juxtaposition? And I think that what I've come to, and someone mentioned it to me, and sort of the path that I'm kind of on now, he said, you know what? When I see evil like that, I don't even want to know why.
Yeah.
They do it because they enjoy it at some level, and that's it. And that kind of helped me like really put closure around the whole thing because I
Yeah.
think that at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, this person got enjoyment out of this for whatever reason. Maybe it's a sickness, maybe it's like they can't help themselves, like whatever compulsion or whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They did evil. You need to like choose to stand with it or against it or outside of it or whatever you want to do, and then move on. And you know that's given me a lot of closure and a lot of like feeling really I can actually look back now at some beautiful times that I had in that group um,
With fondness.
with fondness
Yeah,
and
like
and
after a bad divorce, give it 10 years and you can look back and go, "Oh, the honeymoon was nice." You know?
yeah. And my kid, I had a 14-year relationship, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, I can't remember any times, and I think it's because there weren't that many good times.
Yeah.
But no, like I think I did have some good times there. There were some my worst times and my best times. So whatever.
Yeah. It's true. I when I tell my stepmom some of the stories, she just smiles and shakes her head and says, "You have been living in a different century. Like the stories you tell me are this is the sort of things that people used to go through 800 to 1,000 years ago." Like this is
Actually, what was really funny? Like I actually like I wanted to get demoted so badly. So after my 5-6, like I really like I was like, so that it's like the people who didn't want to get demoted, like they got demoted to like three. I think the one guy ended up getting he got demoted to 3-8, and I kept thinking I want to be in 3-8. I don't want to be this adept. I want to be back in practicus.
I
What the
know.
hell
I was
is
always
this?
so jealous. I was always, I mean, in the end, there was a time when there was like 5 minutes when I was a new adept that I was inspired and inspiring. And then once a bunch of shit happened, some things that you kind of made reference to that I may or may not edit out, or, like I'm going to
Whatever.
be discreet when I go through it. I don't want to give too much away, about people who are relatively innocent. But anyway, what was I talking about? Fuck. Yeah, once that all went down, I kind of lost any sense of that there was a redeeming value to what we were doing, and I was basically running on autopilot because of my oath, basically, and
I
just
think that I
for
think
lack of
everyone
anything else to
was.
do.
I
Yeah.
think everyone was, and I think that that's where it's like when you guilt people into taking into these oaths, it's kind of like,
For
well,
life.
for
Yeah.
life, and this whole
Or
idea of
longer. Yeah.
you don't follow this guy and you're fallen. That's very cult like. That's
Yeah.
very cult like, and I highly recommend that anyone you know when they're thinking about an order or a group or whatever, like really respect yourself first and really think about yourself first. Don't think about the group first. Think about yourself and like where you want to go and where you want to be. Um, but so I will tell you this. I never really recognized myself as an adept until way after I had left the group, and I actually she didn't know it, or maybe she did know it. There was a former student of mine who actually, in a lot of ways, became my teacher because I started having like this weird recurring nightmare, um, and and no one told me about this kind of stuff in 5-6,
Hmm.
because I just didn't stay long enough, and maybe it my experience was kind of unique. But she said she actually said to me, "Why don't you ask him what he wants?" Like this person was like chasing me and whatever. Ask him what he wants. So I did that, and my life completely changed because then I started to like go into all the dark spots because the Golden Dawn by itself, it's this completely solar egregore, and it's all about the ego. It's all about the sun and the light of the sun and blah blah blah. And what it does, what it kind of eschews is this notion of no, no, no. Like now you need to like look in the darks. Like you're strong enough now with all this solar love that you have. Take
Right.
that light and go into the darkness of yourself and
You've been
explore that
pathworking
and
Resh long enough
understand
to
it.
pathwork Cove. Yeah.
Yeah, like really, go into those spaces and love those spaces. Like really, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I sort of feel like it's this like really powerful spot for me.
Hmm.
But I had this, so I had another like recurring nightmare where there was this being that was across the hall from me, and the door was locked, but was locked from its side of the house, and I was sleeping kind of on the other side of it, and I was really nervous, like thinking, "Oh my God, this critter's gonna like, eat me." But it was locked, and she's like, "Well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? It was locked from its side, so it's afraid of you, isn't it?" And I was like, "That's interesting." So I started doing this like meditation where we were passing notes to each other underneath the door, and it didn't trust me, and it didn't trust me for good reasons. And I finally built that up, and it unlocked the door. And again, my life totally changed. And it was only till like I had done enough of that work that I really kind of felt like, I kind of feel that I finally got my 5-6, but I kind of had to do it on my own. Like going through that initiation, yeah, it was fine and everything. It was a beautiful initiation, but on the other hand, like I think that you have to like come into your own, and I think that in a lot of ways, I think you've come into your own where you've kind of like said, "This is what I want to teach. This is what I want to do with my life." And yeah, it's not Golden Dawn, so I need to part ways, and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also like to teach Golden Dawn to people who want to learn it, but they don't want to drink the Kool-Aid, you know?
yeah.
Because there's a lot of fucking Kool-Aid. And I mean, we were talking earlier about joining a group where if you're not in league with the leader, you're fallen. That's basically the Mathersian formula of how to have a traditional Golden Dawn order. So if you're in a traditional Golden Dawn order and you take a good, honest look at it, you might just find that that's the case. And I think the only good reason to get involved in that is if you genuinely love Victorian English esoteric reenactment. Like if you would go to the Renaissance Fair every year, regardless of whether it was owned by Blockbuster, then by all means join the Cicero order, but stay away from Griffin and but you know
Oh,
what I mean?
yeah, but I think this, knowing like what, so I'm certainly not in Cicero's order, um, but I love the people that are there. I love who's there, and I love what they kind of talk about and their approach.
Yeah.
So I don't like it's
I
not as authoritarian. I would think. I mean, I'm not there. I don't know.
I know the system well enough that and human nature well enough. It's right now they've got who was the guy that was the emperor at the beginning of that movie Gladiator? The old guy, the philosopher.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember.
yeah. Right now they've got him, at the helm, and I'm sure that God willing, Chick should live forever. But I mean, I think that down the road, if the structure of that corporation, of that organization, remains intact for another 100 years, then we'll get the Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, I think that the good news in that particular group right now is that you have a lot of people there who are young enough, but
Yeah,
who've also been through, some nasty, nasty orders and nasty conflict, and you see the results of all of that. I hurt people who were my only friends. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like that's absolutely ridiculous.
yeah,
And that's one thing. Like I don't. when I was a kid, like in my 20s, I'm like, oh, I'll never regret anything about my life. I regret that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I know. I read the stuff I used to write when I was an idealistic teenager, and I've never written like that since because there's been this seed of I am a hypocrite buried underneath, that I
Yeah,
can never escape. And I've had to accept that I'm not gonna do enough good karma to be able to look myself in the mirror and say I'm absolutely proud of it myself. And I don't think, this is probably not going to be my last life because of it, because of how much I seem to be still carrying and unable to let go of, just as far as guilt.
yeah. I think that there are things you can do that'll help, and you know what those things are, and
Yeah,
and we get there, and I think that
it's
it's
recurring.
it's funny though. It's funny because I think that the physicians, like doctors, are the worst patients, and I
Yeah.
think knowing this stuff, like it's the hardest. I remember you telling me the most hysterical story about that you were in a relationship with someone who was in the order, and she told you, or you told her to go banish, and I thought that was the most hysterical
To
thing
go what?
because that to go, it's
Oh,
like
to go
you're being
banish.
you're grumpy, you need to go banish. I mean, like that's gonna make you feel better, and like while you're doing it, like all the resentment that you have, like like my partner just told me to
Uh,
go banish, like f them, like
oh
I thought
God.
that was so
I've seen
hysterical.
that. I watched a Hierophant boss his Hegman wife around, and then the past Hierophant, same man, boss his Hierophant wife around while she was on the throne. And, people would have to take them aside and be like, you can't be bossing your wife around while she's on the Hierophant throne. People have to have respect for that office. It's just
Right.
like, but yeah, I could easily see him telling his wife to go banish and her going and doing it. It's like, God.
But
I'm grateful
I'm
that I have a wife who would never tolerate anything like that out of me.
Yeah, but I think we're the worst patients because we know all the things we need to do. It's sort of like okay, I need to do daily practice and I need to do this, and here are the things I need to work on, and it's sometimes really hard. I think that even knowing the specific techniques kind of can get in the way
Yeah,
of doing that, and that's where I think exploring like all the different things that are out there
like
can be
yoga,
really
yeah,
useful.
breathing,
Yeah,
and just yeah. I mean, it has the initial appeal to it was there was nothing in it that reminded me of all that shit. You know?
well, what was really healing for me? I mean, this is going to be really strange, but since the last person you talked with was Sal, I think that it's also really appropriate. So in our order, our past order, the idea that Set was Satan was very prevalent, and the
Hmm.
idea that oh my God, like we stand, we're Osirian and Set is like evil and stuff.
Right.
And so I ended up in an order, and actually before then I worked with a former adept of the FOL, and we're kind of doing our own thing. And she taught me a lot about both Anubis and Set. And the FOL does use Set in their initiation rituals that I didn't understand that, and she kind of gave me a different point of view, so that when I went into this other order where as Hyrus, I was Set, and so I take those offices on very seriously. In that I see it as a devotion to that particular god. So
Yeah.
I was Set's devotee for 6 months, and I thought that was all both funny and strange. And I got to tell you, during that time, Set isn't evil. He's an archetype, and he is. If you think about the tree, like he's beyond the Keter of Asaya. So, is it a always a pleasant energy? Well, no. Like you can evoke aspects of Set that are very warlike. I mean, he was a warlike god. Um, but there are aspects of him and his intelligence. Remember, Set is the slayer of Apep, and Apep as the as ignorance. I mean, that was like the worst sin in the world. It's like, no, you've got to rise up, and he's the one in a lot of ways that tells you, no, like pick yourself up, be strong, like be strong in the face of adversity. And there were really good things that he did, but it was those kinds of things, like really shifting my own model of the universe and seeing that it's not this dichotomy of this is good, this is evil. It was much more, here's how it all kind of works together, and you know here are different ways of viewing this entire huge universe that we live in,
Yeah.
where we know, like, such a small, tiny percentage. and we get better, but every like minuscule baby step, we think that we've accomplished so much, and we've got so much more to go. We have so much potential, um, that things like set as Satan is just such a childish and
Right.
limiting view.
Well, my
When
mom was fond of saying he was the archetypal male chauvinist pig because he thought that Isis shouldn't rule while Osiris was away, that he should rule as the brother, and he had the head of a pig. So that was enough for her to make him the epitome of all evil, having lived through the early 60s and all that. But that's something else. That was just where that was her spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, and people can have those spins, and I think that sometimes having those points of view can be really productive for your own growth, like in that particular moment. Um, and then you kind of move on. Like my ideas about Crowley have really changed.
Oh yeah,
At
for
first
sure.
I thought, well, okay, he's the the spooky beast. But I mean, it's kind of like I kind of seem like a Marilyn Manson, where I think that he was, you can look at him as kind of spooky, or you can think he's hysterical when he like bends over and shows his ass in a cop uniform. I
Yeah.
think it's hysterical, and Crowley is all those things. Like he can be spooky, he can be really like really intelligent and really bring forth some really interesting ideas. And he can be an asshole, and he can be brilliant, and he's also a chauvinist, and he's all of those things. So um, limiting him to, oh my God, don't read anything Crowley because
Yeah.
he's evil is not particularly productive.
Yeah, I can see also an arc in, like, I was raised on Sesame Street, and I remember, my sister and I, when we were first exposed to the idea that people were doing terrible things in the world, like genuinely, without any irony whatsoever, looking at each other and saying, "Didn't they watch Sesame Street?" And so that was kind of like the bubble that I came from. And so as I was growing up, it was like racism bad, chauvinism bad, and then being totally accepting of everybody no matter what good. And then but then so then I started to hate my ancestors the more I learned about them. And then I finally had to come around to acceptance, and then eventually loving them, and being
Yeah.
able to just accept them as shit. You were in the Old West. You had a gun and a flag and a sun, and you shot your share of Native Americans, and you built yourself a house, and that's why I live in LA. What can I say? Like, if there's karma passed down the genes, I've got some bad karma there, for sure. But there's like, I vaguely remember Jesus saying something about, and Buddha too, about being able to free yourself from ancestor karma. But I think it takes effort.
I don't know. I like the idea that karma is kind of the net sum of where you are right now. And so like when I think about karma with bad genes, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you could have the cancer gene, and that could really suck.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, or like, you're in a really good place with yourself right now because you've kind of dealt with the core of who you are. Or maybe you're just imagining it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or you,
It's all a ploy,
you know,
like in the old order, like that, because it was headed by a male chauvinist pig who was selling the idea of Satan or set as Satan to women by saying he was a male chauvinist pig, and then claiming that the order was all about this hermetic figure that was non-gendered, and that Kether is non-gendered, and luring people in. But you notice there were very few females in the second order, because by the time you get that close to the sun, you find out how chauvinistic it is.
yeah, but you know what's hysterical? Like I always think of the movie, The Commitments, with respect to that old order, because you had that really old guy who was really kind of gross, and he got like all these women, and you're like, what the
What
hell
the
is that all about?
fuck?
Like these pretty young women are like throwing themselves at this really ugly guy.
Hmm.
Um, I just didn't get it, but whatever. I think it's power. I don't know. Some people are attracted to power. It's
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, I could be the next, chief's wife. Like, and the people that end up having that job will tell you it's not worth it.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, you should edit that out. That's so mean. I don't mean to be mean to like, you know,
Well,
to like. I
well,
mean,
we're
because
thinking
at
of
the end,
specific people, but I mean,
I
there's going to
know.
be, and there's going to be people listening that know who we're thinking of while we're talking, and then there's going to be other people that are like, "This is really interesting," and it kind of reminds me of the situation I'm aware of, you know. So I'll have to go through and very select.
I don't know. I mean, it's mean, and I know, and I shouldn't call him ugly. But
Oh,
he's
that.
just not my type.
No, I don't think that he was a more attractive guy when he was younger. I think that's why the order was going so well in the early 90s was because he was still in his early 40s. He hadn't really let himself go yet, and you know, but like once you have kind of the tubby, balding, you know, sweaty 50s.
Yeah, but he still had women throwing themselves at him, even with that going on. Like, go
Right.
figure.
Well, he had to
It
start
was,
targeting, you know, the young-looking 40-year-olds instead of the, you know, 20-year-olds like he was.
yeah, yeah. But it's like it's got to be embarrassing to have the vault of the Adepti, the most holy place that you actually have in your order, be called the honeymoon suite. I
Oh.
mean, that's yep, that's what was called on the outside. It was like,
Oh
yeah,
shit.
their honeymoon suite of the Adepti.
Oh no.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
That kind of way where you're just like, oh my god, I work here. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I'll have to build
and
one.
then it's like like you have these things happen and it's not explained, or it's like, oh, it's these dark forces attacking us. It's like you have a chief's adept wand breaking, or you
Oh,
have part of
forces of evil. We need
oh,
a
it's
new
the force.
acronym to take care of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, why don't you look at yourselves, you know
Yeah.
maybe these things are breaking because it's from the inside, but whatever.
Yeah.
you know Told
Yeah.
me once about oh, I said his name, I shouldn't, like,
Oh, I'm gonna
please
go through
actually
and
edit
keep
that
it.
out.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, so this guy that we're so Voldemort, we'll just call him Voldemort. So Voldemort actually talked to me once about this book that he had read about. I think it was something like How to Create a Magical Order or something like that. And it was written from a more like a black magic path. If you like, I'm using that term, you know,
Honestly.
in a bad way, but but this guy, what he was talking about is that they all had guns. Um, in their group, and the idea was that, like, as a tool, like, one, like, if you ever left the group or you betrayed the group, they would like shoot you. And that was kind of the symbolism behind that in their group.
Hmm.
um, I mean, that's really creepy. And, talking about that kind of thing, it's like, okay, you've read this book and you've really thought about it, not like one of these things where you read you read some of these books, you're like, oh my god, that's such trash, and like you block it out of your head. Like,
Yeah.
some of the plague and Wiccan stuff. I think Wicca's great, but like everyone should know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the plague and stuff, where it's like the just dance around and skyclad and you're magical. Um,
Right.
that kind of stuff I like block out of my head. I don't even remember what I read, but like, he'd really thought about that. And I think that he used a lot of those tactics and those techniques. I think that the real shame of it is that the people that were there were by and large really, really good people, at the core. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had a couple of really bad apples, but they really were pushed out before they a lot of them made it to a 5-6. Now some of them really should have been in 5-6, and there were other reasons that it didn't work out.
Right.
But there were, the bad apples really were kind of like, and I'm talking, when I say bad apples, it's the people that are, where you could clearly see, okay, this person's going to be really manipulative and creepy and gross, and they're going to do like really bad things if they run a sanctuary, and
Yeah.
you need to protect people, that kind of thing. Um, so it's just a shame that like there was this guy that had like a group of pretty decent people who, just was the tactics were horrendous. I mean, one guy I'm thinking about now who was one of the most inspired people that I think I've ever met. He wasn't allowed to go to college. He had to basically sit in poverty, um, because this guy didn't want him I think, Voldemort really recognized this guy was really brilliant, and if he got out to explore the world, or to use his massive brain to really do something else, then there would be big trouble for his group.
I'm right here. Wait, wait, are you talking about someone else?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
you are
oh.
too. You are too.
I know. God, if I had like my dad spent 6 years in college and then he went on to do all these great things and actually within society, I mean, I can brag, I have bragging rights to really, flaky, sometimes schizophrenic people, like when I run into them, I can say, well, I was fully initiated in traditional Golden Dawn order, and most people will kind of slowly back away, usually not knowing what I'm talking about, maybe thinking of the Greek Nazis. And then there's that small percentage of people that'll be like, wow, I really respect your credentials. And it's like, God, was that worth 20 years of my time? I don't know.
Yeah, there's actually someone. She goes by Scarlet.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can say Scarlet Magdalene, right?
I,
Okay, so
I hope so.
Scarlet
I'd love to have her.
had.
Hey, come on the podcast, Scarlett. Anyway,
Yeah, she needs to be on the
yeah,
podcast
yeah.
because,
No,
and
she's the
wait for
esoteric.
me.
I bow
I'm
before
like,
esoteric Scarlett. You are a superior esoteric nerd to me. I want you on the
yeah.
show.
And by the way, she would have been episode 4 for me. I should have been episode 5,370. I'm like the filler, but but
Well, I also have people on who are interested in, things, not just who are experts, but yeah, she once upon a time she was my student, but she was my teacher. She was always my teacher.
yeah, I had one like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was posting something from this guy who was saying, I got I forget what he did. He was like, I got I was like a straight A student in the Golden Dawn, and I started laughing.
What?
I
That's
was like,
hilarious. On all the pop
wow,
quizzes.
you know the Hebrew alphabet and correspondences. Like,
What?
congratulations for
Oh,
you.
did you have a bar mitzvah? Oh.
Speaking of which, have you ever thought it was strange? I mean, I've heard a historical theory for this, but have you ever thought it was strange that they had Tatwas in the Golden Dawn? I mean, it seems like it's like teaching. Um, I don't know. It seems out of place, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that in the context of, because it comes up first in Theoricus, but you really get into it in Practicus, right? Is that standard
Yeah.
or was that just us? Um, so, like, for one thing, it's like it almost seems like the whole Samothracian Kabiri thing and the whole Chaldean thing is all just to like divert and distract you from the fact that it's Egypt, Judaism, Christianity. Like,
Right.
our very limited view of the thread of history. It starts in Egypt, goes to Israel, then to Rome, then to London, then to you and your sanctuary too. But but so
That's
we throw in
hysterical.
so we throw in some Samothracian, bring in a little Jainism just as a teaser, like, oh, now that I'm in the third grade, Theoricus, we get into some Eastern stuff, and then lo and behold, there's never any Eastern stuff again, except that which is implied in the entire Western mystery tradition and its, influences
You know
from the
what
East.
I saw is just this kind of weird missed opportunity. Like, for me, when I first experienced it, I was like, oh, so this is going to be kind of like this encyclopedic kind of thing, um, where it's like, it's one of those secret teachings of all ages where everything kind of fits. And when you think about this whole notion of 5-6, and where basically you're given the Rose Cross, and it's like, well, this gives you access to everything. Well,
Yeah,
that everything shouldn't just be limited to, you know, um, this very, very small sliver of what's available to you.
yeah,
I mean, it should incorporate yoga. It should incorporate, or at least that there's a place for it. You know,
yeah, for sure.
but solar traditions just don't. I don't think you. It's it just doesn't work. I think you have to have something beyond a solar construct that can accept all those things and
I,
somehow balance them all out. And it's a weird thing. It's like that's what it kind of requires. It's like this huge matrix and this huge, puzzle. And in theory, you would have this thing that coalesces and like figures out like, well, how does this really fit into this broader whole? Um, you have like all these really interesting, diverse people. How can you like fit them all together? How can they coexist in a nice system? And it doesn't get that far. It always falls short, and that's what's so heartbreaking.
yeah, that's true.
So I've kind of thrown up my hands and said, you know what? I personally like I think it's all good, but I don't see a group or a system or one thing being able to unify these things together yet. I hope that I know that there are a few people who are kind of trying to work on that in really odd ways of like, well, how do you unify everything?
Right.
How do you create a world where you know these different systems can coexist without people like killing each other? And so people are doing some work, but it's really hard. I don't personally see a solution, but I really am supportive of those who work to make that happen.
I try to, as far, I mean, I'm thinking specifically of, the one that everybody is on it. The first thing that comes onto the mind of anybody who watches the news, which is ISIS, not our ISIS, but the more recent one. Um, and I mean, as far as this, the fundamentalist and violent Islam or Christianity, I've been putting a lot of energy into promoting mystical and maybe quote unquote deviant or heretical forms of Christian thought, as well as Arab,
Well, the Sufis are
Islamic.
great. I love
Yeah,
Sufi literature,
not to
and I want to
mention
like
older
explore.
Arabic stuff like what Ka's doing. Like if
Oh
people
yeah,
if people were to discover this rich system of the mansions of the moon and all these different things. I mean, he says don't mess with the
yeah.
mansions in
He
the
says
moon,
stay
but
away from the moon.
yeah,
That was something I got, like one of the things that stuck with me is like he's like stay away from the moon. I'm like okay, gotcha, gotcha.
yeah,
No,
don't go there.
seriously, like his stuff, like whatever he's what like for him, like if he says anything, I'm like yep, okay, agree with you. Like don't need to go there.
I wondered if that was the origin because there was one point where the other BT told me there was my Hierophant was a different BT, by the way. If anybody, I think I've never said that on the air, so that's a weird one.
I
But
never met him, but
yeah,
but I know who you're talking about.
yeah. But he told me you can't fly to the moon; that you have to draw a door and walk through the door to the moon. And so to prove him wrong, of course, I flew to the moon, and I had no problem with it. But I wonder if that's related to Kaz teaching about stay away from the moon.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I'm not sure what you would get, like what you would seek out of that kind of out of the moon anyway.
Something new.
Yeah, I mean, there's this notion of fluidity, and I guess if you need something broken, I knew this woman who who I believe was kind of cursed by our former order, and she got sick in a way where she just couldn't get any better.
Yeah.
And I guess in that kind of case, you could have used sort of that notion of fluidity to try to like fluidly like undo the night. Basically, what she was dealing with was this Gordian knot of energy. So you try to pull at one side of it, and another part would tighten, and that's just how it felt. Like, and so actually, um, the thing that worked was something that because I actually was working with Joe Max, and Joe Max would also be a great person to have on the
Hey,
Esoterinerd.
Joe
He's
Max, if
awesome,
you're listening to this, we want to have you on the Esoterinerd podcast. Okay.
brilliant, 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 and super nice guy.
I used
Really
to fight
funny.
with him back when I was during my year as a crony, and I was basically repeating everything that Voldemort said, and he was challenging it, and I was doing my best to mercurially dance around his challenges. But I got to
Because
really. you
He's a
know,
beautiful guy. Like
oh,
his
he's
whole
great.
family is
No, he was
beautiful.
absolutely right the whole time, and he was
Yeah.
pointing out all the logical fallacies that I was parroting, and I really appreciate. He's part of the village that raised me, so and he may not know it, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think when they were when I joined a similar. I can't really. I should just say it. So I was part of the OSOGD for a while,
hmm,
and I think they were all kind of like very dubious of my
part of the
membership
unified order. Sorry,
because it
go.
was sort of like I came from this group that was very like to have someone come over from my group was just unheard of.
Right.
Um, and so I think that they kind of somewhat always questioned my motives. Although the reality, I'll actually tell you the reality uh, of why I was there. I actually got this weird vision one night that I had to go to San Francisco, and it was Tahuti, and he was basically like, "You need to go." I'm like, "Huh?" And it all fell into place. Like I almost it was almost like I didn't have a choice. I
Hmm.
did have a choice, but like it was just so it was all easy, and it was all like all
Yeah, he
these.
made me make this fucking Esoterinerd podcast. Fucking thought.
Yeah,
So,
well, but it's all good, like right?
yeah.
Like you get to
No,
like do this.
I
So
like
it's kind of
I like letting him, call
like
the shots, but
he'll give you he'll call the shots, but like he'll pave the path for you. It's like okay, I'll just go down, and it's all good.
yeah.
So then, I got like someone that we both respect. I wonder if I can. So LED, I'll say Soar LED kind of
Hmm?
mentioned, hey, I talked with um, some people over there, and they seem like decent guys. And so I joined, and it all seemed really good. And I remember there was a time like there were things I really fit in with them really really well, and there were things that were just not a fit at all.
Hmm.
Because I really like mystical Christianity. In addition to like, I think they couldn't understand the notion that I love mystical Christianity, but I also recognize and have relationships with other deities.
Right.
Um, that just seemed like because there are people in that group that really had very very traumatic experiences with Christianity,
Yeah.
um, very traumatic, and I do respect that. But I'm not going to change my own views. I'm not going to change my relationships with my deities.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because
and
you had met what's her name in India, you saw Jesus on an altar with Ganesh,
yes,
and
and
that's like, oh, you can do that. Well, she can do it. Why can't I?
and I that's like that's a mirror of my personal in my heart. That's my altar.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's got everything on it, and you know, and I get like where people can't move beyond a particular issue they had in their childhood, and some of them were really like they're heartbreaking things to hear,
Yeah.
and I can't help I can't help that. I can't
Yeah.
change anything in their past. If I could, I swear I would. Um,
Right.
but at the end of the day, like I think that they didn't really get that. So they had like people like Joe Max was my like he was kind of like the watcher over me, which was great. I loved it because I love him and his family's lovely and he's so smart and that was my dream come true really. It's like yeah okay cool you're gonna watch over me, but really the I remember being hegemon there and I remember looking up and I was just like Thoth because the relationship between Ma'at and Thoth it was the perfect point to kind of like look up and be like, I was literally like, dude, why am I here? Like,
Yeah.
it's not working. Like, I'm really trying. I'm trying to like be here, and he like I there was one word, and it was wait.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, I will hang out. Like, I'll hang out here, and then I kind of like faded, and I came back, and like there was something kind of driving me back, but I didn't really know why. And I was like really like doing like I was moving up the grades and stuff, and I became Hyris, and that's why I did my. That's what leads into my whole set thing. Um, and then there was this thing because I wasn't in their inner order, but I heard that hey Voldemort wants to kind of come and visit our temple,
Hmm.
and I was like waving my arms like hell no and like not on my watch, do not bring him in here, do not let him in the door,
Right.
because like I then talked to other people and they're like here are specific tactical things that he will do if he gets in the place, He'll use thumbtacks. He'll use this like charged thumbtacks. Like he'll just put them like randomly in different places. It's like don't let him in the door. And
Mhm.
so when I described all of that, they were kind of like, I think that it just took them aback that there was this guy who would actually do this kind of stuff. Because I think that the people in the OSOGD, by and large, they're nice people. They
Yeah.
really are. They're also really smart. Some of them are more devoted than others, and whatever. Like it's a the limit kind of group, so it's a little bit more loosey than like you have in other groups in terms of what's expected out of you. But there's a lot of like really good, you know, thoughtful scholarship, and they're really decent people. And I think that hearing these things that this person would do really shocked them. And I think that it also, you know, even though I was able to keep him out, it created more scrutiny on me because it's like, wow, this was your leader, and
Yeah.
who are you again?
Yeah.
Um, and so I was pushed out in a rather not nice way. It was very kind of passive aggressive, and I saw it for what it was, and I asked Set. He's like, "Honey, you need to leave," and
Yeah.
I was
This is
fine
what
with
you
that.
came here to do.
I did exactly what I came to do. I needed to protect them. That's
Yeah.
all I needed to do, and I needed to just be there at that one moment in time, and it was fine. I still have a couple friends from there. There are people that I wish that I was still in contact with, but it's just better than sometimes relationships are just better when you kind of make a clean break and you just say, you know what, I was there for a purpose. I really like you guys. I wish you the best, and peace be with you. We're done.
Yeah.
But I really like them. I hope they do great things. They're fantastic people.
They were
The one
teaching Theoricus poker like a month ago. It's like, what?
That's awesome. They
Yeah.
do cool things like that, And Max in particular, like there are people that you're like, oh my god, I want to connect with you. Like Jeff Contreras and Joe Max should be best friends because they do like
Similar
Joe actually
things.
created. Well, yeah, he created this really cool thing with using like one of those Reichian orgone creators,
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
orgone generators. Yeah, and I know that Jeff is really into that too.
Yeah,
So
he
it's kind of
gave my mom and I one once.
yeah. I should probably. I
But
think
I
I
think.
should be. I should be a Western Mysteries matchmaker.
Ah.
I think that's my next job. It doesn't pay very well though, so I think we gotta like keep my day job as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, there isn't really anything that pays well in the occult. Yeah.
Not so much. Yeah, it's not
Can't really
like.
point to anyone and say, now there's the millionaire.
But
Even
thank
even the
God.
really scummy guys, even these like these people, these aspiring CEOs of corrupt organizations aren't even getting rich off of it. It's pretty funny to watch, actually.
But
You
it's
can't
like,
even say. Oh, sorry.
but you can't be here for the money because it's like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be an occultist. I'm gonna like be
Yeah,
powerful. It's like really like you can't really be here for the power or the money
yeah.
because
It's
it
got to
ain't
be
here.
ego only. Yeah, like you're the coolest of the people that are so cool nobody knows about them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those horrible things. I think it's like a bad Willy Wonka kind of thing where you're like dressed up in your robes and you're like waving your wand all about and like you see your army of like these really tiny gnomes and everything, and then like when you get into when you pass on, you realize that they were only there because of their niceness to you, and they
Yeah,
could
they
squish
were
you with
being
their
polite.
feet.
Yeah.
And you finally realize how small you are in this big universe.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, I find that, where before, because, living in LA, there's always a certain amount of noise. And, getting away, going somewhere where there's stars, going up into the mountains or the desert is always good
Yeah,
to clear out
yeah.
the mind. But then, like, so it makes sense that because I mean, I imagine back in 1888 in London, they'd have the sound of horses outside, and you'd have extra, extra, you'd have all those Victorian sounds going on. So, and not to mention the coal, the smoke everywhere, and the smell of shit.
Okay, so we're here, and I hope that you edit this part out. But
Sure.
like you've been around a lot
Well, if
longer
I'm
than
gonna
I have,
edit it out. Oh, there we go.
or
Okay.
not,
Oh no,
or
I
not. Like
just
I
want
don't
to
care.
let that fart out.
But what the hell is
Didn't want to
TVL's
jinx it.
deal? Because honest to God, like I could never be friends with him. Like I tried so hard to be like. It's like I want to get to like like just trying to get to know someone on a very human level.
Yeah.
I never got there. I never got there. I don't know who he is. I've got no idea. Here's this guy, and it's like, I want to be your friend, and you so won't let me.
Yeah.
And I always felt bad about that. I always felt like, and it was my own. It was totally my own insecurity, and where I was in life. I mean, these days I'm kind of like, you know what? Look, I'm too old. If you're gonna blow me off, that's totally fine by me.
Yeah.
I think it affected me more because I was in my 20s. Um, and I was kind of like, well, why won't you give me the time of day? Like, why won't you? I just
Right.
want to know who you are because you're this leader, and I need to know if I can trust you. And if you're
Yeah.
doing that, I'm not going to trust you, and I wouldn't trust him with with a cat because I don't know him. But let me tell you something really chilling, which is
Yeah.
that he was talking with Voldemort, and Voldemort went into this like weird trance, and I forget what was speaking through him, but it was like a possession kind of thing where he
Hmm.
was like, I forget like what dark entity was coming through. You know what? You're full of shit. If you're really like, because he was talking on a cell phone, like driving through, he's like, if you're real, make a prostitute appear on the next block, and one did. Um, and it was like the guy with the shark club kind of thing, like whatever. I think it was like just its own dark persona coming through and manifesting. Um, and so, if you're that dark and you're able to kind of show your true colors, if, okay, so I'm going to put myself empathetically in that kind of entity. If I were to show my true colors, I would do so just to jeer at you and just say, fuck you. You know what? I can come through your chief adept anytime I want to. And if I can do that, then I can appear gracious and pious, and I can tell you to do things in a way that you're going to believe, and they're going to be really messed up.
Yeah.
I can tell you to reverse circumambulate someone who's really nice and do it in a way that really hurts them, and you're going to believe me. And when you have something like that going on, whether you call it's someone's subconscious or someone's like whatever, that's a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's why I always like when I was looking at the 7 points of recognition for the Thuban order, the unified order, and one of them is the acknowledgement of the existence of a third order. That was almost the point where I was like, I'm over it, you know. Like
Oh,
I
and by the way, let me tell you something. And I think the OSOGD is the smartest order in the world because they aren't looking for contact.
Right.
They aren't looking like I'm like because I remember I brought it up once and they're like we don't like what do we want contact for? And I'm like no, that makes total sense. And you know why? Because the I won't say which order. It's not. It's one of the ones I've talked about before, but it's not one that either of us were in.
Hmm.
They had contact, and their guardian was Anubis, and they they fucked up.
Hmm.
Um, and the according to my friend who's an ex adept of the oh I said the name you
Uh,
got to edit that out
okay, okay.
ah anyway so whoops so
I'll just bleep it, but I'll leave in your reaction.
okay please bleep it because I don't want them to get in trouble.
Of course.
But the issue is that whenever you do actually have third order contact, um, and you lose it, like if that current is drawn away, the current is drawn away forever, but you're still watched.
Hmm.
You're watched forevermore, meaning that like you will not get away with anything, and the leaders will not get away with anything. Like your karma is going to come back on you big time. And
Yeah.
so for an OSOGD, they're like, look, we're successful with what we do. Why do we need extra current to do that? Like we're good enough we're fine. And that's a really smart way to go about it,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, if you want the current, you
Yeah.
know, for various reasons, I think it's fine. Like if you want to say, okay, I want to accomplish something really big and worldwide in that, like I want to, I don't know, like I want to alleviate hunger, which like good luck. But like seriously, great thing to focus on. If you want your order to do that, then if you want contact to support you, it's fine. But you have to understand that these entities from beyond don't care about your human needs.
Yeah.
Um, they do not care if you're tired. They don't care if you're hungry. They don't care if you're poor. They don't care. Like they'll make it happen, but you will suffer, and you have to know that going into contact. And I don't think people do. They just think, oh, my order is going to be the biggest, and I'm going to be really famous and whatever. That's bad. That's a bad reason to get contact because the karma that you impose upon yourself and your order is really can be a real problem
It
for your
seems like
life.
it seems like initially the Golden Dawn was trying to get away from spiritualism, but then Mathers kind of developed a new and very specific kind of what can only be described as Mathersonian spiritualism, where he had the link to these ghosts that were, and no one else was allowed to have that link. And even if you got contact that said it was this being, and even if it's been verified that it was that being, then that contact doesn't count as far as the governance of the order. Like it got into all those little finer details, and of course Voldemort loved to use those as an example of what we were going to be doing in our order.
Well, it was a really weird like double. There was this weird double standard going on. So I was taught a connection with the third order contact that we have, and I don't mind one of them because it's not his true name.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taught how to do it, and I did it, and it was a really that was the unique experience in terms of how to actually make that contact.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, it actually relates to methods of contact for archangels um, and deeper connections with the gods themselves if you want to do that. And I'll talk about those because I can't talk. I won't talk about the former, but the ex-adept of the that I worked with told me how to connect with the archangels, and that was, bringing them in through the normal methods that you do, vibration and visualization and everything. And it's, you know, opening up the chakras except for the root chakra. You don't want to open up the root chakra
Hmm.
unless you want to be incapacitated for like a week. Um, uh, but the archangel opens up their chakras and they enter you. Um, they enter you as if you were God form in some ways, and you can do that with the higher forms. I got to tell you that experience with Mikael, one in particular, it was like having an aura of smiley faces for several hours afterwards.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a method that's taught. Um, and it's kind of so I'll leave it at that. But I will say that it was interesting. I almost lost consciousness with the contact thing that we were taught, and then but I would have a tape recorder in there because I didn't know what I said, and
Mm-hmm.
so having the tape recorder really helped in like playing back. Okay, what did I say? Because I can't remember anything I said. Um, and Then when I would talk about what I heard, then the edict came down from on high to my personal senior adept that all contact comes from Voldemort.
Right. To
And
read
I'm
the
like,
read the
well,
back of the things you should know about the Golden Dawn by Rigardi. Yeah.
and I'm like, well, why even teach me this method if now what I'm saying is like now you feel threatened by it.
Yeah.
Like why give me this? Like it was that was really odd. I didn't understand that at all. It's a really bad tactic. You know, I think that at the end of the day, and his one of his ex-wives said, I don't know if he believes in magic, and that I wonder that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people do, I think. Does he buy his own bullshit?
Because I think I reached something, but I was still too junior to really know what am I reaching. But when you start to kind of go unconscious with your own work that you're doing, and you're tape recording it, and you're kind of coming back with things that are kind of useful to you, um, I think the markers scared him enough
Hmm.
that he was like, no, 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 don't do that anymore.
That's how Keith Richards got Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Really?
Well, he was doing a lot of heroin and he put a tape recorder on and he passed out. And then when he woke up, he rounded it all the way back and it was just bow, bow, ba, da, da. And he said, I can't get no satisfaction. And then he passed out.
Okay.
And then he was like, hey, there's something here.
Well, it's a hit, and
Yeah,
God bless Keith Richards,
still
and Courtney
going.
Love. You know what? Courtney Love gets a lot of slack, but I love her so much. I really do. The whole slag fest of Courtney Love and Marilyn Manson, where Marilyn said something really gross about Courtney, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know that I always thought you were gay, Marilyn. I'll sleep with you. I've got 115 is I've got 115 open
Mm.
to 118, and that gives us time for a smoke."
Uh,
She's like, "Of course I'll fuck you. Um, we've got 3 minutes, and we'll have a smoke afterwards."
That's fun. Hmm. Reminds me of those letters going back and forth between Rigardi and Crowley.
Oh no, yeah, I haven't really read those, but I can only
There's
imagine.
one that starts off, Dear Alice, you really are a contemptible bitch.
Yeah, yeah. But you asked about video games, and like we spent like literally like two
No
minutes on it.
time,
Like,
yeah.
do you want to
Well,
like talk more
I
about
remember
that?
there was some like actual demonic evocations that you were telling me about years ago in a particular game, but I don't remember the game.
Oh, so Silent Hill, like the whole
Oh,
Silent Hill series was really, really. Um, so let's talk about that a little bit, and like you can figure out how to like splice that in.
yeah.
So Silent Hill, it started off as one game, and then it like turned into this huge franchise. And as the franchise grew, it became less powerful. I think that there were really two games that became like really powerful for the series, and one was Silent Hill, one was Silent Hill 2. So Silent Hill, um, and you can actually go through the entire gameplay on YouTube, so you don't even have to like figure out how to like emulate a PS or a PS2 or whatever.
Right.
But it was really powerful because the idea was that so the story is that there's this guy, super nice guy. He lost his wife, but he still has his girl, and the girl is adopted, and she wants to go. She keeps like wanting to go to Silent Hill, so he's taking her there. She's asleep, and then there's a bad car accident, and he gets run over, and he falls unconscious in the car accident, and he can't find his daughter. Like, where
Hmm.
is his daughter? Like, that's the whole game, and it's like July, but it's snowing, um, and they can't like what's that all about? And there's like all this demonic stuff going on. So he's going through this town trying to figure out like where is my daughter? Like that's the whole question. Like where is my daughter? And it's this whole like weird thing where what happened is that there was this cult, much like the EOGD, um, and they evoked Samael into this girl to try to get power. Well, something went wrong, and um, the entity kind of split, and the evil portion of the girl like rescued the good portion of the girl, and the evil portion of the girl is still intact and still in the city. Um, and what's interesting about this whole thing is that it, the evil portion of the girl keeps trying to like morph parts of the city so that it's really hellish. Um, and so there are these different forms of reality. You don't really know which one you're really in. Um, and for the protagonist, it's not a problem because he's genuinely good, so he's able to escape.
Hmm.
Silent Hill 2 is really interesting in that what it assumes is that the issue of the town is still intact, meaning that the that Samael has been evoked, and people come to Samael to receive karmic punishment for their crimes.
Hmm.
You don't know that going in. You just think, the game premise starts with you're this guy, you're this young guy, you lost your wife early on in your relationship and you're devastated, but you got this letter from her saying, let's go to our special place, Silent Hill. Well, you go there and you're not able to enter the city, so you have to go in through the woods, and that's a whole thing. That's a whole ordeal. And you start to see entities that are attacking you that look like they're in a straitjacket and they vomit like stuff that harms you.
Hmm.
Um, and then you're trying to like find your wife like in this horrible town, and you can't really escape at this point. So you're like, what's going on here? And then you see this entity called Pyramid Head, and it's this notion of a triangle. And if you think about the archetypal triangle of judgment of Shin, he's trying to kill you, and then you're not able to actually harm this thing that's trying to kill you. You can only slow it down, and then the thing that actually lets it go is a siren. So it's this higher or lower power, if you will, that lets it leave, and then you can continue on your journey. You find a simulacrum of this of your wife called Maria. So Mary is the your wife. Maria is the simulacrum. Uh, and the difference between Maria and Mary is that Maria is like a sexy version of Mary. You know,
Sort of like the female lead in Metropolis.
exactly. So then you sort of like have so you're kind of like helping to save her, and then the next kind of enemies that you come up against are these nurses that are like really sexy. They've got these big boobs, and you see the cleavage, but they've got no face. They're trying to like hit you with these iron pipes, which I think is hysterical. And the other enemy is like this mannequin, like the sort of sexy mannequin that just tries to batter you. So the enemies aren't really bad. But they probably feel really familiar to this character because it's all about like what you find out later, what you end up finding out at the end. Sorry, spoiler alert, but this
Uh.
game's been out forever. It's been like 10 years. Sorry, um, but it's really creepy, and the atmosphere is really creepy, and you're playing this guy along, and he's being nice to these other people, and you're the good guy, and they're the bad guys, and you're just like trying to find your wife. What you realize when you finally get to the hotel and like put this videotape in is, oh my god, you euthanized your wife because like she was sick, but you killed her with a pillow. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I remember throwing down the controller at this point because I'd been like through this game for like 4 hours, and I'm like, really, like really, like what the hell's wrong with you? Um, and I love that about the game where it like really challenges you, and then you start to realize like all the pieces fit in, and the game ends in um, different ways depending on how you play it.
Wow.
So if you're with sexy version of Maria for the whole time, then what happens is that you actually kill in your mind the real version of Mary, and you're like, okay, sexy Maria, like get in the car, we're gonna go home. But she starts to cough. Like, oh, this cough is nothing, meaning that like this whole cycle is gonna start again.
Hmm.
Like you did nothing, you were nothing. Like
Yeah.
it's kind
Right
of like the
back where you
worst of thing.
started.
Exactly.
Huh.
And then the best version is where you realize that this whole thing is an illusion and you really need her forgiveness. Like that's actually the best version. And you kind of get that forgiveness through the story. Um, there's a suicidal version where it's like, okay, I really realize I'm here to just kill myself because I did a horrible thing. And then one of the most abusing versions, as I see it, is the version called Rebirth, where you find these various like mystical artifacts, and it's only available in replay. So you have to have like gone through the story before, but you find these mystical artifacts that allow you to reanimate her. So she's basically a zombie at the end, and I love that version the best.
Nice.
And what's cool about the Xbox version is that you actually get to play as Maria, and it's actually the whole scenario is called Born from a Wish. So you wake up as the sexy version of Maria in a strip club, and you're like, "Who am I? I'm really lonely." Like you hear her thoughts and everything, and she's like, she's unarmed, so she's like trying to get through all this stuff, and she learns through the city like why, like what her purpose is in existence, and she realizes at the end, there's actually a very touching scene if you think about it, and it makes you think about your own personal demons. She's walking through the street alone in her high heels, and she's like clicking along, and she looks awful. Like she just looks really sad because she kind of realizes like what she is, which is just basically a figment of a horrible man's imagination. And she holds a gun to her head, and she stays there for a while, and she like throws the gun, and that's the end. And you hear in the epilogue like she's introducing herself, like, "Are you looking for someone? Do I look like your girlfriend?" Like she's taken on the role, she's taken it on willingly, but but there are those moments where she's like, she recognizes what she is, and she really hates it. And I think that it's a really powerful like reflection of how we view our own personal demons when we don't like truly embrace them and love them and say, okay, you're dark and you can go there, but you're part of me and I love you. And this is what you bring to me, and I want you to like come into the light with me because I can nourish you in a way that you can't get otherwise. So, it's kind of like
Yeah.
one of my favorite like inner demons was like this when I finally like looked in the darkness for him. He looked like this like 8-year-old. Do you ever remember the Weekly World News like Bat Boy? Like he was like this little boy with like these
Yeah.
huge fangs.
Yeah.
He looked exactly like that, and I'm like, oh, but he like appeared like suddenly in like the light, and I'm like, oh, sweetie, I'm like, like you are that fierce part of me where sometimes I can look really scary, and I need that. Like I need you to like come with me, but I need like let's go together. Like I can nourish you. And he's like, he wanted to feel safe, and I'm like, I can give you safety. I promise. Like
Yeah.
you're okay with me. Come with me. Like let's go together. Like we'll hang out. Like it's good. Like I love you. And rather than being like this shameful, like I'm in the shameful space. I'm a shameful part of you, and
Yeah.
it's like
Well,
no,
it's
no, no,
like
no, no.
that. What makes me think
Come with me. I love you.
is like if you have a cat in the car and you love your cat, but you don't want to let him drive, you know?
Right.
So it's like the same with the inner demons. It's like, oh yeah, when you take over, we end up losing friends. But I love you, and you're not going to take over. You know?
Yeah, it's like, but it's like holding their hand and saying, you know what? I
Yeah.
love you because you bring this to me. I recognize all this about you. I recognize, yeah, you're like this, you're like that, but I recognize this is the power that you give me,
Yeah.
and
And
you've
I
got to come
respect my
with me.
ancestors enough to, and I acknowledge that you are my grandfather in me. You're the worst of my
Yeah,
father in me, and I love
absolutely.
you. I love you, and I love him, and you're not going to take over. Yeah.
But those kinds of things are productive. What I don't think is productive is that Victorian idea of I'm going to take the demon out of the mirror and crucify it and whip it and like no, 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 that's not productive. What's
Right.
productive is saying, because that's a control thing. That's like I'm going to control over you. No,
Right.
no,
Just
no.
like Rome tried to control Palestine through the horrible act. Yeah, exactly.
No, embrace them, like hug them, give them a big hug. Like think about an abused kid. Like why are they in the dark? They're in the dark because if they're in the light, like you're gonna freak out. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. No, but give them a hug and just say, look, like we can do this together. Like come with me. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be
Like
you. Like you
Dexter.
exist. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that's productive, and it's
Yeah.
all about like what's productive. And we learned we do, as humanity grows, we do learn things, and I think that in the Golden Dawn times, I think you could be more like um, abrupt with the spirits, like where you could say, "You're gonna do my bidding, bitch," because like
Yeah.
I like rule over you per Genesis 1. Like they were
Yeah.
probably just like smoking a cigarette, being like, "All right, like well, like okay, I get it, like fine," but they weren't really fine with it. But they're kind of like, "Okay, humanity is basically like a 4-year-old kid. We'll deal with it." Well, now we're kind of like 6, and so we haven't grown that much, but the rules have changed a little bit. It's like, okay, you can't call me bitch, all right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's the same with our inner demons. Like, don't be shitty to them. Be okay. They're part of you, and those things need to be loved. Like, you know, what what turns nice girls to the stripper pole is like a lack of love by their dads. I'm being
Right.
so I'm PC here, but like
It's
if you love them,
okay.
like they can choose to be there or not, but they won't be driven to it.
Yeah. Honestly, if anybody would pay me $500 to dance on a stripper pole for a few hours, I might be tempted.
I'd do it. I wouldn't just be tempted. I would do it. You know, Particularly me, like my fat hairy ass. Yeah, I mean, if someone's gonna pay me money, all right, all right, I'll make it rain.
Oh man.
This
Well, thank you for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast today.
is a great way to end. I love it.
Yeah.
My fat hairy ass on a stripper pole. There we go. In your big old studio.
I feel like that we only scratched the surface, so we'll definitely have to have you back once we realized all the things that we didn't talk about.
Oh my God, absolutely. I'd love to be back. I would even be like your Robin to your I'd be the Robin to your Howard Stern. Because I think that's my role in life.
Well, yeah, we can do a three-way Skype. That's one thing. One direction we haven't gone yet is to have more than two people. Well, except we did do that, but we had one person here in person. But
Yes, yeah, I would be the Robin. I would like laugh at all your jokes, I promise.
oh man,
And actually, I would do it like really. I wouldn't like fake it because I'm New Yorker. I'm not LA. Like I would totally do it for real.
nice, nice.
Anyway, um, yeah, this has been so much fun, and I'm so honored to be on here because, but there's so many people that have to get on here. Like,
I
you
know.
know, who I'd really love to
Feel free
hear.
to speak in the name of the podcast if you happen to be talking to someone you think we should interview, and then we can do
Okay,
just that. Do a
so
two
here
tag
are the
team
three
interview.
crazy wish list people that I have. So Joe Max is awesome. I would
Mhm.
love him to be on
I
here
think that's
because
achievable.
I think like that, like the whole, and not just because he's so awesome at like chaos magic, but he knows a lot of different things and he has a lot of different perspectives. And I love that his perspective on healing is really interesting. So he'd be awesome. Scarlet Magdalene, oh my God, she's got to get on because she's so awesome.
And
And
also Kirini Ariadne, in addition.
oh, both of them, both of
Yeah.
them.
Maybe
Um,
both at the same time. We could go back and forth and they could argue.
she's amazing and she's done really, really cool work that a lot of people would be interested in. Um, And then actually, Xena Shrek is like she's got such an interesting story, and she knows a lot. And I think that she would really change people's perspectives on different like avenues within Buddhism. I think that her understanding of Set and Egyptology is really like she's really smart. And I think that she doesn't get I think that she's fine now, but she didn't get a lot of credit in the early days because she was really the '80s poster girl for like the whole satanic ritual abuse stuff
Hmm.
because her dad was Anton LaVey. Um,
Mm.
but you may have some issues in getting her because I think she still lives in Germany, and so the time difference may just be awful. But who knows?
Yeah, we can work around it. Cool. Yeah, I'd like to get Alejandro Jodorowsky on here, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Well,
I sent him word a while back, but no response.
yeah, there are loads of people who should be on here, but I'm grateful to be part of the history of the Esoterinerd podcast. I still think I should have been episode like 5,407, done by your intern, who, by the way, again, she gave me the best cup of tea I think I've ever had. Um, and thank you for the Valley Park. I hope I do. I need do I need to validate my parking ticket
No,
or
it's all comped.
okay, awesome, cool.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next time on here, and maybe we'll do a co-host situation. And
That'd be fun.
all right, cool.
See ya.
Well, thank you, Joe, for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. I look forward to co-hosting with you in future interviews. Special thanks to the monks at Jofuku-in Temple, which you can hear in the background right now. Special thanks to identical twins Camille and Kennerly, playing the harp a Game of Thrones transitions into and out of the interviews. And special thanks to J.K. Rowling. May you find yourself lucidly walking upon the path that is yours. I'd like to close tonight with a piece by Phoenix Suvius of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I found this at his site baphometsboombox.com. A song by 23BC called Breathe in the Air, performed by Phoenix Suvius as Ankh Kemet Hemut.
Yes, Ankh Kemet Hemut, it basically means life to the earth's poetry. I'm going to perform a song that I wrote a few years ago called Breathe in the Air, and I'd like to thank Jacob Green for helping me out with the music on this one. So,
You feel your dear
drinking from a broken cup that will only mend if you fail to. So breathe in the air, filled with beauty and thoughtful prayers, meditations making aura sweet, without a worry or a care. Breathe in the air, breathe